Oh yeah, number 13, Jacksonville. TK's letter had said Jacksonville. He had worked in the railroad shops up there before, and his old boss had promised him a job come next payday. No need for Johnny to wait any longer. Wear the new blue dress because he meant to marry her right from the train. Hurry up and come because he was about to turn into pure sugar thinking about her. Come on, baby, Papa. TK never could be mad with you. Johnny's train left too early in the day for the town to win as much, but the few who saw her leave bore plenty witness. They had to give it to her. She sure looked good, but she had no business to do it. It was hard to love a woman that always made you feel so wishful. The train beat on itself and danced on the shiny steel rails mile after mile. Every now and then the engineer would play on his whistle for the people in the towns he passed by, and the train shuffled onto Jacksonville into a whole lot of things she wanted to see and to know. And there was Tea-Cake in the big old station in a new blue suit and straw hat, hauling her off to a preacher's house first thing. Then right on the room he had been sleeping in for 2 weeks all by himself, waiting for her to come. Then right onto the room after they get married. And such another hugging and kissing and carrying on you never saw. It made her so glad she was scared of herself. They stayed at home and rested that night, but the next night they went to a show, and after that they rode around on the trolley cars and sort of looked things over for themselves. T-Cake was spending and doing out of his own pocket, so Johnny never told him about the $200 she had pinned inside her shirt next to her skin. Phoebe had insisted that she bring it along and keep it secret just to be on the safe side. She had $10 over her fare in her pocketbook. Let Tea-Cake think that it was all she had. Things might not turn out like she thought. Every minute since she had stepped off the train, she had been laughing at Phoebe's advice. She meant to talk Tea-Cake the joke sometime when she was sure she wouldn't hurt his feelings, so it came around that she had been married a week and sent Phoebe a card with a picture on it. That morning, Tea-Cake got up earlier than Johnny did. She fell sleepy and told him to go get some fish to try to fry for breakfast. By the time he had gone and come back, she would have finished her nap out. He told her he would, and she turned over and went back to sleep. She woke up and Tea-Cake still wasn't there, and the clock said it was getting late, so she got up and washed her face and hands. Perhaps he was down in the kitchen fixing her around to let her sleep. Johnny went down and the landlady made her drink some coffee with her because she said her husband was dead and it was bad to be having your morning coffee by yourself. Your husband going to work this morning, Miss Woods. I seen him go out in a good while ago. Me and you can be company for another, can us? Oh yes indeed, Miss Samuels. You puts me into mind on my friend back in Eatonville, yeah. He was nice and friendly just like her. Therefore, Jenny drank her coffee and sankled on back to her room without asking her landlady anything. Tea-Cake must be hunting all over the city for that fish. She kept that thought in front of her in order not to think too much. When she heard the 12 o'clock whistle, she decided to get up and dress. That was when she found out her $200 was gone. There was a little cloth purse with a safety pin on the chair beneath her clothes, and the money just wasn't nowhere in the room. She knew from the beginning that the money wasn't any place she knew of it. It wasn't in that little pocketbook pinned to her pink silk vest. But the exercise of searching the room kept her busy, and that was good for her to keep moving, even though she wasn't doing anything but turning around in her tracks. But don't care how firm your determination is, you can't keep turning around in one place like a horse grinding sugarcane. So Jenny took to seeing over the room. Sit and look. The room inside looked like the mouth of an alligator, gaped wide open to swallow something down. Outside the window, Jacksonville looked like it needed a fence around it to keep it from running out on the ether's bosom. It was too big to be warm, let alone and to need somebody like her. All day and night she worried time like a bone. Way late in the morning, the thought of Annie Tyler and Who Flung came to pay her a visit. Annie Tyler, who at 52 had been left a widow with a good home and insurance money. Mrs. Tyler, with her dyed hair newly straightened and her uncomfortable new false teeth, her leathery skin blotchy with powder and her giggle, her love affairs with boys in their late teens or early 20s, for all of whom she spent her money on suits of clothes, shoes, watches, and things like that, and how they all left her as soon as their wants were satisfied. Then her ready cash was gone. Had come Who Flung to denounce his predecessor as a scoundrel and took up around the house himself. It was he who persuaded her to sell her house and come to Tampa with him. The town had seen her limp off. The undersized high-heel slippers were punishing her tired feet that looked like bunions all over. Her body squeezed and crowned into a tight corset. No, her body squeezed and crowded into a tight corset that shoved her middle up under her chin. But she had gone off laughing as sure as Jenny had been. Then 2 weeks later, the porter and conductor of the northbound local had helped her off the train at Maitland. Hair all gray and black and bluish and reddish in streaks. All the capers that cheap dye could cut was showing in her hair. Those slippers bent and gripped just like her work-worn feet. The corset gone and the shaking old woman hanging all over herself. Everything that you could see was laughing, or everything that you could see was hanging. Her chin hung from her ears and rippled down her neck like drapes. Her hanging bosom and stomach and buttocks and legs that draped down over her ankles. She groaned but never giggled. She was broken and her pride was gone. So she told those who asked what had happened. Hooflung had taken her to a shabby room in a shabby house in a shabby street and promised to marry her next day. They stayed in the room 2 whole days, and she woke up to find Hooflung and her money gone. She got up to stir around and see if she could find him and found herself too worn out to do much. All she found out was that she was too old a vessel for new wine. The next day hunger had driven her out to shift. She had stood on the streets and smiled and smiled and smiled and begged and then just begged. After a week of world bruising, a young woman from the home had come along and seen her. A young woman from home. She couldn't tell him how it was. She just told him she got off the train and somebody had stolen her purse. Naturally, he had believed her and taken her home with him to give her time to rest up a day or two. Then he had bought her a ticket for home. They put her to bed and sent for her married daughter from up around Ocala to come see about her. The daughter came as soon as she could and took Annie Tyler away to die in peace. She had waited all her life for something, and it had killed her when it found her. The thing made itself into pictures and hung around Jenny's bedside all night long. Anyhow, she wasn't going back to Eatonville to be laughed at and pitied. She had $10 in her pocket and $1,200 in the bank, but oh God, don't let T-Cake be off somewhere hurt and I'm not knowing nothing about it. And God, please, don't let him love nobody else but me. Maybe is a fool, Lord, like they say, but Lord, I've been so lonesome, and I've been waiting. Jesus, I've been waiting a long time. Jenny dozed off to sleep, but she woke up in time to see the sun sending up spies ahead of him to mark out the road through the dark. He peeped up over the door seal of the world and made a little foolishness with red, but pretty soon he laid all that aside and went about his business dressed all in white. But it was always going to be dark to Janny if T-Cake didn't soon come back. She got out of bed, but a chair couldn't hold her. She dwindled down on the floor with her head in a rocking chair. After a while, there was somebody playing a guitar outside her door. It played right smart. Wow, it sounded lovely too, but it was sad to hear, feeling blue like Janny was. Then whoever it was started to sing, ringing the bells of mercy, called a sinner man home. Her heart all but smothered her. T-Cake, is that you? You know so well it's me, Janny. How come you don't open the door? But he never waited. He walked on in the guitar and a grin. Guitar hanging around his neck with a red silk cord and a grin hanging from his ears. Don't need to ask where I've been all this time, 'cause it's my all-day job to tell you. T-Cake, good Lord, Jenny, what you doing sitting on the floor? He took her head in his hands and eased himself into the chair. She still didn't say anything. He sat, stroking her head and looking down into her face. I see what it is. You doubted me about the money. Thought I done took it and gone. I don't blame you, but it wasn't like you think. The girl baby ain't born and her mama is dead. They can get me to spend our money on her. I told you before that got the keys to the kingdom. You got the keys to the kingdom. You can depend on that. Still and all, you went off and left me all day and night. It was because I wanted to stay off like that. And it showed Lord wasn't no woman. It wasn't because I wanted to stay off like that. And it showed Lord wasn't no woman. If you didn't have the power to hold me and hold me tight, I wouldn't be calling you Miss Woods. I met plenty of women before I knowed you to talk to. You're the onlyest woman in the world I ever mentioned getting married to. You've been older, don't make no difference. Don't ever consider that no more. If I ever gets to messing around another woman, it won't be on account of her age. It'll be because she got me in the same way you got me. So I can't help myself. He sat down on the floor beside her and kissed and playfully turned up the corner of her mouth until she smiled. Look at here, folks, he announced to an imaginary audience. Sister Woods is about to quit her husband. Jenny laughed at that and let herself lean on him. Then she announced to the same audience, Miss Woods got herself a new little boy rooster, but he been off somewhere. I won't tell her. First thing, though, us got to eat together, Jenny. Then we can talk. One thing, I won't send you out after no fish. She pinched her in the side and ignored what she said. Tain't no need of neither one of us working this morning. Call Miss Samuels and let her fix whatever you want. T-Cake, if you don't hurry up and tell me, I'll take and beat your head flat as a dime. T-Cake stuck out till he had some breakfast. Then he talked and acted out the story. He spied the money while he was tying his tie. He took it up and looked at it out of curiosity and put it in his pocket to count it while he was out to find some fish to fry. When he found out how much it was, he was excited and felt like letting folks know who he was. Before he found the fish market, he met a fellow he used to work with at the roundhouse. One word brought on another one, and pretty soon he made up his mind to spend some of it. He never had his hand on so much money before in his life, so he made up his mind to see how it felt to be a millionaire. They went out to Callahan around the railroad shops, and he decided to give a big chicken and macaroni supper that night, free to all. He bought up the stuff, and they found somebody to pick the guitar so they could all dance some. So they sent a message all around people to come, and then come they did. A big table loaded down with fried chicken and biscuits and a wash tub full of macaroni with plenty cheese in it. When the fellow began to pick the box, the people began to come from east, west, north, and Australia, and he stood in the door and paid all the ugly women $2 not to come in. One big marini-colored woman was so ugly till it was worth $5 for her not to come in, so he gave it to her. They had a big time till one man come in who thought he was bad. He tried to pull and haul over all the chickens and pick out the livers and gizzards to eat. Nobody else couldn't pacify him, so they called Tea-Cake to come to see if he could stop him. So Tea-Cake walked up and asked him, "So what's the matter with you know-how? I don't want nobody handing me nothing, especially don't issue me out no rations. I always choosing my rations." He kept right on plowing through the pile of chicken, so Tea-Cake got mad. "You got more nerve than a brass monkey. Tell me, what post office did you ever pee in? Craves to know." "What do you mean by that now?" the fellow asked. "I means this, it takes just as much nerve to cut caper like that in the United States government post office as a dude to comes pulling and hauling over any chicken I pay for." He hit the ground. "Damned if I ain't going to try you this night." So they all went outside to see if Tea-Cake could handle the booger-boo. Tea-Cake knocked out 2 of his teeth, so that man went on from there. Then 2 men tried to pick a fight with one another, so Tea-Cake said they had to kiss and make up. They didn't want to do it. They'd rather go to jail, but everybody else liked the idea, so they made him do it. Afterwards, both of them spit and gagged and wiped their mouths with the back of their hands. One went outside and chewed a little grass like a sick dog. He said to keep it from killing him. Then everybody began to holler at the music because the man couldn't play but 3 pieces, so Tea-Cake took the guitar and played himself. He was glad of the chance because he hadn't had his hands on a box as he put his in the pawn shop to get some money to hire a car for Jenny soon after he met her. He missed his music, so that put him in the notion he had to have one. He bought the guitar on the spot and paid $15 cash. It was really worth $65 any day. Just before day, the party wore out, so Tea-Cake hurried on back to his new wife. He had found out how rich people feel and how he had a fine guitar and $12 left in his pocket, and all he needed now was a great big old hug and kiss from Jenny. They fool still spending money. He came back because there's no money. "You mustn't thought your wife was powerful ugly. Them ugly woman that you paid $2 not to come in could get to the door. You never even load me to get that close," she pouted. "Janie, I would have give Jacksonville with Tampa for a jump back for you to be there with me. I started to come get you 2-3 times. Well, how come you didn't come get me, Jenny? Would you have come if I did?" "Sure I would. I likes fun just as good as you do, Jenny. I wanted to mighty much, but I was scared, too scared I might lose you. Why? There wasn't no high mucks. Them was railroad hands and they women folks. You ain't used to folks like that, and I was scared you might get all mad and quit me for taking you amongst them. But I wanted you with me just the same. Before us got married, I made up my mind not to let you see no commonness in me. When I got mad habits on, I go off and keep it out your sight. Tain't my notion to drag you down with me. Look at here, Tea-Cake. If you ever go off on me and have a good time like that and then come back here telling me how nice I is, I expects to kill you dead, you hear me? So you aims to partake with everything, huh? Yeah, Tea-Cake, don't care what it is. That's all wants to know. From now on, use my wife and my woman and everything else in the world I needs. I hope so. And money, don't worry about your little old $200. It's big payday this coming Saturday at the railroad yards. I'm going to take this $12 in my pocket and win it all back and more. How? Honey, since you loose me and give me privilege to tell you all about myself, I'll tell you. You done married one of the best gamblers God ever made. Cards or dice either, and I can take a shoestring and win a 10-yard. Wish you could see me rolling, but this time it's going to be nothing but tough men's talking all kinds of talk, so it ain't no place for you to be, but it won't be long before you see me. All the rest of the week, Tea-Cake was busy practicing up on his dice. He would flip them on the bare floor, on the rug, and on the bed. He'd squat and throw, stand in a chair and throw, and stand and throw. It was very exciting to Janie, who had never touched dice in her life. Then he'd take his deck of cards and shuffle and cut and deal out, then examine each hand carefully and do it again. So Saturday came, he went out and bought a new switchblade knife and 2 decks of star back playing cards that morning and left Janie around noon. They'll start to paying off pretty soon now. I wants to get in the game whilst the big money is in it, and ain't for no sputting today. I'll come home with the money or I'll come back on a stretcher. He cut 9 hairs out of the mole of her head for luck and went off happy. Jenny waited till midnight without worrying, but after she began to be afraid, so she got up and sat around scared and miserable, thinking and fearing all sort of dangers, wondering at herself, as she had many times this week, that she was not shocked at Tea-Cake's gambling. It was part of him, so it was all right. She rather found herself angry at imaginary people who might try to criticize. Let the old hypocrites learn to mind their business. and leave other folks alone. Tea-Cake wasn't doing a bit more harm trying to win herself a little money than they was always doing with their lying tongues. Tea-Cake had more good nature under his toenails than they had in their so-called Christian hearts. She better not hear none of them old backbiters talking about her husband. Please, Jesus, don't let them nasty N-words hurt her boy. If they do, Master Jesus, grant her a good gun and a chance to shoot him. Tea-Cake had a knife, it was true, but that was only to protect himself. God knows Tea-Cake wouldn't harm a fly. Daylight was creeping around the cracks of the world when Jenny heard a feeble rap on the door. She sprung to the door and flung it wide. Tea-Cake was out there looking like he was asleep, standing up. In some strange way, it was frightening. Jenny caught his arm to arouse him, and he stumbled into the room and fell. Tea-Cake, you child, what's the matter, honey? They cut me, that's all. Don't cry. Get me out this coat quick as you can. He told her he wasn't cut but twice, but she had to have him naked so she could look him all over and fix him up to a certain extent. He told her not to call a doctor unless he got much worse. It was mostly loss of blood anyhow. I won the money just like I told you, around midnight. I had your $200 and was ready to quit, even though it was a heap no money in the game. But they wanted a chance to win it back, so I sat back down to play some more. I knowed old Double Ugly was about broke and wanted to fight about it, and I sat down to give him his chance to get back his money, and then to give him a quick trip to hell if he tried to pull that razor I glimpsed in his pocket. Honey, no up-to-date man don't fool with no razor. The man with a switchblade will be done cut you to death while you fooling with a razor. But Double Ugly brags he's too fast with it to get hurt. But I know the better. So around 4 o'clock, I had done cleaned them out complete, all except 2 men that got up and left while they had money for groceries, and 1 man that was lucky. Then I rose to bid them goodbye again. None of them didn't like it, but they all realized it was fair. I hadn't to give them a fair chance, all but Double Ugly. He claimed I switched the dice. I shoved the money down deep in my pocket and picked up my hat and coat with my left hand and kept my right hand on my knife. I didn't care what he said long as he didn't try to do nothing. I got my hat on in one arm in my coat as I got to the door. Right here, he jumped at me and I turned to see the doorstep. Outside, and he cut me twice in the back. Baby, I run my other arm in my coat sleeve and grabbed that N-word by his necktie before he could bat his eye, and then I was all over him just like gravy over rice. He lost his razor trying to get loose from me. He was hollering for me to turn him loose, but baby, I turned him every way but loose. I left him on the doorstep and got here to you the quickest way I could. I know I ain't cut too deep because he was too scared to run up on me close enough, sort of pull the flesh together with sticker plaster. I'll be alright in a day or so. Jenny was painting on iodine and crying. You ain't the one to be crying, Jenny. If his old lady ought to do that, his old lady ought to do that. You done give me luck. Look in my left hand pants pocket and see what your daddy brought you. When I tell you I'm going to bring, I don't lie. When I tell you I'm going to bring it, I don't lie. They counted it together, $322. It was almost like Tea-Cake had held up the paymaster. He had held up the paymaster, like robbed the paymaster. He made her take the 200 and put it back in the secret place. Then Jenny told him about the other money she had in the bank. Stupid lady. Put that 200 back with the rest, Jenny, in my dice. I need no assistance to help me feed my woman. From now on, you're going to eat whatever my money can buy you and wear the same. When I ain't got nothing, you don't get nothing. That's all right with me. He was getting drowsy, but he pinched her leg playfully because he was glad she took things the way he wanted her to. Listen, Mama, as soon as I get over this little cut and scrape, we're going to do something crazy. What's that? We're going on the muck. What's the muck and where is it? Oh, down in the Everglades around Lewiston and Belle Glade, where they raise all that cane and string beans and tomatoes. Folks don't know nothing down there but make money and fun and foolishness. We must go there. He drifted off into sleep, and Jenny looked down on him and felt a self-crushing love, so her soul crawled out from its hiding place. Chapter 13 is a good one. All right, y'all. That was the end of chapter 13.